On January 17, 2024, Geert Wilders tweeted, and I'm going to read this in an American accent, "We hebben een serious problem," and then a bunch of other stuff. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I apologize to the Dutch speakers out there, but this tweet went viral because it sounds really silly if you are an English speaker. I think Rob Den Blijker said it best in the replies. Am I yelling so hard? Why is Dutch just drunk English? Because the first line, "We hebben een serious problem," sounds like what a drunk American trying to do a Dutch accent would sound like. Now, to be clear, I know that that's not how it's actually pronounced. And I know that the actual tweet is from a super far-right politician in the Netherlands who is tweeting criticisms about a law not being anti-immigrant enough. But that doesn't distract from the fact that this image, "We hebben een serious problem," is a hilarious reaction image. But before we get to that, I wanted to give a native Dutch speaker time to discuss how he feels about this. How he feels about accusations that Dutch is just silly English. And I want to have someone on to actually pronounce all this stuff correctly. And so I did what any responsible curator would do. I tweeted out, "Do I have any Dutch speakers who follow me? Need an expert for a tweet I want to cover." And thankfully, Arash Azizada, who was born in the Netherlands and first spoke Dutch, said yes. Alright, Arash, you grew up speaking Dutch before you spoke English, correct?
I did, yes.
And when you were learning English, did you notice some similarities between the two languages?
Yeah, I mean, I started seeing definitely similar vocabulary and also just like structures of sentences that sounded like either like directly just English or a lot of similarities, which I think partially allowed me to help learn English much quicker because I already spoke Dutch.
The phrase "we hebben een serious problem," can you say that correctly in a Dutch accent?
We hebben een serieus probleem.
Okay, that sounds less like English. That sounds more like a real language, unlike the way it's written out. But as someone who spoke Dutch first, and now, you live in an English-speaking country, do you ever get, offended that people mock the way that Dutch is written?
No, I think when I hear people kind of mock the language, I just agree really strongly with them because now in retrospect, I started speaking Dutch first, and now I speak English, and now in retrospect, looking back, I think Dutch is just by far the silliest language out there. And maybe just one of the more ridiculous languages. And then now, in retrospect, being older, I'm like, I'm not sure the language really makes sense to me.
Are there any other phrases in Dutch that you think are funny that people who enjoy "we hebben een serious problem" would enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, by far the most, and I think this has gone viral in the past on Twitter because non-Dutch speakers see it and then they try to pronounce it or they read it, and the phrase is neuken in de keuken, which means to have, to have intercourse in the kitchen, and they read that sentence and they say, "Wait, that's how you say that, and that's how you," and it just sounds as silly in Dutch as it does in English. But I'm not sure Dutch speakers realize that.
No, it's really that one. I was hoping you would say that because it really is insane that that's true. I just actually, my brother actually texted me when I told him I was going to speaking to a Dutch speaker. Wi-Fi on the train is Wi-Fi in the train.
Yeah, that's a similar one. And I just went back to visit the Netherlands. I still have some family there. And, you speak the language, and I'm like, you guys, do you really realize how silly and just ridiculous this language is? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And, since I left like 20 plus years ago, they've started incorporating a lot more English words. And I think partially subconsciously they realize how silly and weird the Dutch language is.
I really don't want to thank Arash for coming on. I've held off on doing this episode for a while because I honestly didn't want to do it without an actual Dutch speaker. It would feel disrespectful, and I'm glad I found one who agreed that it is pretty silly. For the rest of the video, I'm going to be pronouncing it "we hebben een serious problem" because that's the way that most people read it, and also I'm not a Dutch speaker and I don't want to butcher it. One of the first ways it was turned into a meme was Matt Binder put it into a text bubble from Jar Jar Binks in the Galactic Senate. If you read it, you can almost hear it. I'm not going to do the voice because the Jar Jar Binks voice is basically offensive to do at this point. I always say that the 3 prequel voices you can't do are Jar Jar Binks, Watto, and the Nemoidians. But it also was quickly put in other meme templates, like Sidereal posted the photo of Robert De Niro and Joker with the caption, "You're laughing. We hebben een serious problem and you're laughing?" And to put it simply, it's often used as a reaction image when people have a serious problem. Sometimes when it's related to the Netherlands, like when Geert Wilders criticized Trump's handling of the meeting with Zelensky, Jake Rubenstein tweeted, "We hebben een serious problem." And Mahir, who is an F1 fan, tweeted, "Max Verstappen fans, when he doesn't win a race by 86 seconds, we hebben een serious problem." I'm not an F1 fan, fan, but I imagine that his fans get in their feelings. But the great thing about the reaction image is that the problem you're having doesn't have to have anything to do with the Netherlands. Frank Chaparro said, checking my Coinbase account this morning. He had a serious problem. In an example that we all can relate to, Nick said, me whenever a colleague sends an email and then immediately calls me on Teams. We hebben ein serious problem. And last March, Blinken Riley said, looks at my bracket, referring to March Madness, and said, we hebben ein serious problem. Because boy oh boy, is that not the feeling you get when you look at your bracket after the first weekend. But definitely my favorite reference to the meme. This one made me laugh out loud when I saw it legitimately. When they were having the papal conclave that eventually led to the choosing of Pope Leo, Thomas Hodgman tweeted, we hebben ein serious pippin. Is there a greater example of the iterative power of Twitter than someone combining a meme from the year before where a far-right politician tweeted something in Dutch that sounds silly to English speakers, but then they reformatted that to be about a papal conclave and replaced some of the words, but the meaning is still legible to people who know the original meme and who know that a conclave is happening. This is the stuff that makes me unironically love doing the show, because I find the way that language is used absolutely fascinating, and Twitter constantly comes up with ways of using language to be funny that you never would expect. And that, to me, is the exact opposite of a serious problem. Follow me for a new tweet every day, and if you want to support the show, please go to patreon.com/museum of Twitter. You get access to the Discord, where you can vote on what I cover on Subscriber Sundays, and you get a weekly bonus episode called the Museum of Not Twitter.